Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the different ways you can use LECA to grow your plants in hydroponics. Oftentimes there's a misconception about LECA that it's primarily used as a propagation media. As we've talked about before, it stands for lightweight expanded clay aggregate. Essentially it's clay that's heated up and expanded, and it doesn't have any nutrients inside of it, so you need to feed it nutrients. That's what makes it hydroponics. This is the pretty straightforward standard LECA vase you guys have seen all over the internet and we've talked about before. It is simply a vase that does not have drainage. We've got a plant in here, an ALBO that's going to die because it's all white. We've got a root down here that's just touching the little bit of water I've left in it, and you essentially add in a LECA AB nutrient like the one we sell, feeding it exactly what it needs through that nutrient. The next evolution of this passive LECA system is adding an Airstone and an air pump. The Airstone, obviously a smaller one, would drop into the bottom of the vase and then feed the oxygen into the root zone because roots need oxygen. So essentially we're sitting the plant in water and then adding back oxygen. Oxygen is going to be the primary characteristic of this video. We actually just made a short about water propagations using an Airstone versus without an Airstone, and we did find that within 48 hours an Airstone did dramatically increase the speed at which roots grow. So that's the simplest, and when you add in this Airstone, it's considered to be deep water culture, or DWC. The cannabis guys have been using that method for years, and it's very common to sit your plant in water with LECA and then add back air. Moving up the scale a little bit, this is the one I always talk about with you guys. This is a LECA plant with 50-50 LECA and Perlite mixed in, but it does have a drainage hole here. Adding in that Perlite layer in there stretches the watering window, so you only have to water this plant about once a week or every 10 days or so. So effectively, this plant is sitting in air, and then you're adding back the water in to water those roots. It's really important to avoid root rot that you don't overwater your roots. Consider how much it rains in somewhere like the jungle. And each time you water plants like this, or like this, you're adding in a LECA nutrient solution that's ideally already pH balanced and has exactly the right level of nutrients for these plants. Increasing in complexity, we're going to now talk about automated LECA watering systems. This is exactly what I use here at my greenhouse. Everything is sat in these trays. These are hydroponic ebb and flow trays, and this is one of the most standard practices of growing in hydroponics. We use the media of LECA and we water it a few times per week. Everything is controlled on timers with pumps, and effectively what we have is a reservoir sitting on the floor that pumps water up into this tray and then floods up the side of this plant. It's also called flood and drain and also ebb and flow. It floods up the side of the pot and then down again. This also has drainage. This is one of my favorite ALBOs at the moment. Also, I'm giving away one of these ALBOs to one of the 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We've got about 300 or so to go until that 10,000 mark, but once we hit 10,000, I'll randomly select one of those YouTube subs and I will ship you an ALBO for free. You must live in the lower 48 states though. It's too challenging to ship to Hawaii and Alaska. So essentially using this bucket as being my reservoir full of my nutrient water, a few times a week, this pump is going to activate and pump up the water into this tray that would be sitting right here. It's then going to flood up and down the side of this pot so that all of the roots get exposed to water. And then the rest of the time, the rest of the days, it's going to be just sitting in air. That air is what's going to create really healthy root systems, and it's super important if you want really vigorous and strong plants. The challenge here is that then you have a recirculating set of water. This water is never depleted and washed away. It's then reused. And each time this plant eats from it, it's going to change the amount of food in this water. So that level of A and B that's in this water, that food is going to adjust, either go up in parts per million or go down, essentially in concentration. And also, as the plant takes different elements out of the water, it's going to change the pH of the water, the alkalinity or the acidity. And in LECA, we prefer about 5.5 to 6.5 depending on the plant in LECA. So you need to pH balance your water with this system as well as adjust your ppms so that that concentration is at the right numbers. If you want to take this system a step further in complexity, you can do top-down drip systems where essentially a pump pumps the water up into the top of this LECA plant and drains right through and then drips right through back into the reservoir. But again, it's a recirculating system and you need to balance and maintain that water. Since these trays and systems and reservoirs are very complex and have timers, and the average thing that the average person isn't going to put 40 or 100 gallons of water on their floor and then pH and ppm balance their reservoirs twice or 3 times a week, that's why I suggest you pretty much get the same results by doing something hand watered like this, or the DWC bubbler approach using passive LECA like this. I experience very similar growth rate to this hand water method as I do here in the rest of my garden. The trouble is I do have to water this myself and remember exactly the right timing and schedule for that watering. The upside is that I can really be prescriptive in how much water this plant needs and when it needs it, as opposed to these trays simply trigger on a system without fail as kind of a dummy system to auto water the plants. And to be honest, I'm still determining the interval on all these different plants and all these different types of plants depending on the season. I've had many times where I've overwatered plants and I've had many times when I've underwatered plants. Here's an example of that. These are some of the risks to doing an automated system. These are Musa. These are about $200 to $300 each, and it looks like I killed both of them. This happened because my timers on my pumps didn't go off at the right time. So I thought that they were going to water these little baby plants that were about this big when I put them in, but they failed to do so. So now I'm trying to rehab them and bring them back. But these are some of the complexities and the problems that can come about with an automated system. But since I have a few thousand plants in here, it's better that I do this type of automated system so I don't have to hand water everything. But as you guys know, I still do a lot of aeroid mix here for my philodendrons and my syngoniums. But for my Monstera mothers, I do tend to flood and drain the trays to keep those plants healthy and living, but I do always need to change that schedule. But I just thought I would show you guys the different ways in which you can grow your plants in LECA. And there's also a bunch of different hydroponic media that you can use, such as rock wool, vermiculite, perlite. Also worth mentioning, a really cool system you guys should check out. One of my favorites is called Aquaponics. It's essentially where you have a fish tank as your reservoir and it pumps up into the LECA or hydroponic substrate and then pumps back down or drains back down into that tank, and the nitrates from the fish poop feed your plants and create the nitrogen. So it's a way that you don't have to use any synthetic fertilizers to grow your plants. So thanks you guys so much for watching this week's video. If you learned something new or liked the video, please consider subscribing and just like the video. It really does help us out with the YouTube algorithm, and stick around for that 10,000 subscriber ALBO giveaway. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next Saturday. Have a good day.